Hi there, kindergartners. We are going to take a look at our chart to 50, and we are going to talk about number neighbors. And as you know, in your neighborhood, you have neighbors. They might live very close to you on both sides of your house. They might live far away, and you might have a lot of land next to your house. But in our community in Tucson, we do have neighbors, and we are going to look at the number neighbors on our chart to 50. And the first number that we're going to start with is 2, the number 2. So we have the numeral 2, we have the word 2, and we have 2 units right here. And we're going to look in front of before the number 2 to see what the neighbor is on the left. And the neighbor is 1. And look, there's only 1 unit here. So if we look at our neighbor number 2, if we look to the right after the number 2, we'll see that we have 1 more unit than we had before. So neighbor number 2 has a neighbor before and a neighbor next to it after. And goodness, the neighbor before it has 1 less unit, and the neighbor after it has 1 more unit. 1, 2, 3. Well, that's interesting. Let's look at its neighbor that it shares this line with, its neighbor under it or below it. Well, that didn't go up or down by 1 unit. Look at that. It went up by a rod, by 10. So this neighbor is 10 more than our number 2. Very exciting to see. Well, let's look at a different number and see if the neighbor before it is 1 less, if the neighbor after it is 1 more, and if the neighbor below it is 10 more. We'll see if that's true throughout our chart. Now, our number 2 does not have a neighbor above it or on top of it. Let's look at the 5 and see what neighbors the 5 has. Okay, 5 has 5 units, and it has a neighbor to its left before it. And that neighbor has 4 units. Well, that is 1 less than 5. That's very exciting. Let's look at this neighbor to the right or after the 5. Well, goodness, look at that. It has 1 more unit than the 5. Let's look below the 5. And again, the neighbor below has 10 more units than our neighbor above it. 5, 15. Well, this is really exciting, boys and girls. Okay, let's look at a different unit. Why don't we start with our 15 and see what neighbors the 15 has? We already know the neighbor above it is 5. Look at that. 5 has 10 less than 15 because it doesn't have a rod. It doesn't have a group of 10. It's just 5. It just has ones. So let's see what other neighbors 15 has. 15 has a neighbor before it, and that number is 14. Look at that. Again, the neighbor in front of or before a number has 1 less unit. Let's look at the neighbor to the right after the 15. So a 15 has 1 rod and 5 units, and its neighbor to the right, the 16, has 1 rod and 6 units. It is 1 more. Well, that's really exciting. Remember what we learned about the neighbor under, below? That's right. It has 10 more. Let's see if this is true for 15, just like when 5 was our number and we looked at the neighbor below, the 15 had 10 more. So let's look below the 15, and that adds 10 more. So the neighbor below has 25 because there are 2 rods, 2 groups of 10, and still the 5 units, still the 5 ones. This is so exciting to look at a chart and learn how the numbers are neighbors, how they're related to each other, how they're different, how they're similar, what they have in common. Thank you, boys and girls, for looking at the chart with me and seeing the neighbors that numbers have and how they compare. Good job.